President, members, good morning. I'm grateful to the President, Mr. Andrew Leung, for arranging this meeting after I've become elected to take questions from members. This chamber is such a familiar place. Over the past decade, I attended meetings as CS and Secretary for Development, sitting over there, explaining government policies, taking questions from members, and trying to secure member support. In fact, my interaction with LegCo started about 20 years ago. In August 1997, I was Deputy Secretary for Financial Services. One of the tasks was to assist the government in scrutinizing the government's proposals. And that's the official sitting over there. The chairman of the Finance Committee at that time was Mr. Ronald Carrie. He said openly that while I was in that post, since the government officials might not be able to address the questions, the papers would be retracted. At that time, we didn't have any phenomenon of filibustering. The relationship between the executive and the legislature was good. Officials and members of different political persuasions were mutually respectful, and they were easily oriented and not being personal. Mr. Ronald Carrie, Mr. Lajin Sek, Mr. Bernard Chen were LegCo members, were friends, and we are mentors for each other. I said before that I enjoy going to LegCo, that it's not being smart, because this is the place for debates, for working for the members of the public. Over the years, we've seen the cuts and thrusts. We've seen the all the confrontations here. I feel really bad, and some civil servants asked how many times do they have to wait before they would be able to enter the chamber to discuss items at the Finance Committee. I feel really bad about it. Because of the bad relationship between the executive and the legislature and the lack of trust between the two bodies, the government policies have been stalled. I feel bad, but I'm not frustrated. I'm not feeling bad about it, because officials and members have Hong Kong's interests uppermost in their mind. I keep chanting the slogan during the election period that we have to, we care, we listen, and we act. When people are feeling anxious, my first order of business is to unite society, and I have to connect with members. My presence here, I hope they will represent a good beginning. Before I take questions from members, I'd like to say something about two issues. The first one is the improvement of the relationship between the executive and the legislature, and the second is the new resources for the education sector. I attach a considerable importance to improving the relationship between the executive and the legislature. The basic law provides for the respective duties of the two bodies. I respect the role played by LegCo, and I recognize that LegCo's monitoring of the executive branch will contribute to robust governance. I fully understand that quite inevitably members' views and positions may differ. I hope, however, in the coming 5 years we can engage in debates and foster positive communications and interactions with the public interest at heart. I appreciate that an improved executive-legislature relationship cannot be achieved overnight. However, on many issues, not least in the livelihood and economic spheres, there is room for cooperation among members of different political persuasions. I sincerely urge members from across the political spectrum to work hard with the administration to resolve differences, build trust, and build for Hong Kong. As Chief Executive, I'd like to adopt the following measures. I hope that I can build a regular communication channel with members and build a foundation for better relations. On the second day of my becoming elected, I told the President, Mr. Andrew Leung, as much. In the weeks that follow, I had meetings with members from different parties. I'm truly grateful to different parties and members for their positive response and frank exchanges. Second, regarding the policy address, Mr. Leung Kwo-hong, well, she never approached me. She said she met with different parties. It's not a point of order, please. Sit down. Chief Executive. Second, I accepted some suggestions that the policy address will be delivered at the first meeting of a new session. This will enable members to be more focused in the debate of the policy address and the budget. So in October this year, I will be delivering my first policy address outlining my policy blueprints for the people of Hong Kong. I believe that this arrangement will enable members to more easily scrutinize the administration's year-long initiatives at the beginning of the legislative year. There are 3 months to October. Time is a little bit rushed. It may be rather hard to have a full consultation on the policy address. Fortunately, I have received a lot of opinions when I prepared my manifesto. When I was CE-elect, I got in touch with different sectors, and I heard quite a lot of constructive suggestions. I'll build on this and listen to more views from different sectors. And in the policy address, I'll formulate policies on different areas and set priorities, with particular focus on 3 major issues pertaining to education, housing, land, and economic development. Third, I'll be increasing the frequency of coming here to take questions. I know the LegCo is looking at the rules of procedure. I will work with members and tie in with member suggestions and communicate with the President. Fourth, I'll ask all the accountable officials to interact with members more and listen to members' views. Lobbying work has to be hands-on. It cannot be passed on to anybody else. This request was actually passed on at the first meeting on Monday to the Bureau Chiefs. Members, I'd like to say something now about the new resources for education. We're all very concerned about education. As I mentioned in my manifesto, talent is the most important element in our continued development, and education is the key to nurturing talent. Therefore, expenditure on education is the most significant investment that promises maximum returns. In 2017-18, the SAR government has earmarked a total of $87.5 billion to education, of which $78.6 billion is recurrent expenditure, and this is taking up 21.2% of the overall pie. Lower than the 25% at the beginning of the SAR government. Having considered all manner of issues facing the sector, I suggested in my manifesto the annual additional recurrent spending of $5 billion for education. As to how specifically this funding should be used, I gave the undertaking of discussing with the education sector and other stakeholders to collectively resolve issues facing the sector and to march together down the path of quality education. In the past couple of weeks, I met with different groups and representatives of the sector, listening to what they have to say about the way to deploy the resources. Other than that, I've also heard views directly addressed to me from many principals, teachers, students, and parents. Notwithstanding the diverse views and aspirations, it is generally agreed that we should prioritize, with priority going to the more deserving initiatives. Today, I'd like to outline to members our first phase recommendations regarding this extra funding. This covers kindergarten, primary, secondary education, special education, and tertiary education. First, tertiary education. During the last term of administration, I was CS and also chair of the Commission on Poverty. I was very concerned about young people's chance of upward mobility. I believe that education is the best means to foster upward social mobility. As a matter of fact, this was borne out by the findings of the 2015 study on earnings mobility. However, neither the first-year, first-degree places nor the study subsidy scheme for designated professions and sectors can fully meet the demand from students attaining 3322 in the HKDSE, which is the minimum threshold for university admission. In 2017-18, of the 52,000 Form 6 graduates, about 6,600, those attaining 3322 in the HKDSE, and they fall into this category and they fail to get university admission. Some of them would choose to enroll in self-financed undergraduate or sub-degree programs. Also, many students on associate degree courses do intend to further their education, but there are not enough subsidized top-up degree places for them, and they're facing heavy financial burden. They may be able to apply for grants and loans, but they are bringing anxieties and difficulties to their family members. Therefore, I propose that starting from 2017-18, for those students on self-financed degree programs run by accredited institutions, and if they measure up to scratch, those who attain 3322 in the DSE, I propose that a non-means tested annual subsidy of $30,000 be granted to them. This also includes sub-degree graduates going on to top-up degree programs. Furthermore, I propose that an annual subsidy of $5,000 be granted to Hong Kong students enrolling in degree programs in the mainland. It is expected that 39,000 students will stand to benefit straight away. Details of the eligibility criteria will be announced by the Secretary for Education separately. For primary and secondary schools, many teachers and principals put forward to me the idea of increasing teaching posts. In fact, as society and parents are pinning higher hopes on schools, and the learning diversity is getting wider, and there is more concern about the emotional and behavioral aspect of the students. The teaching profession is facing an ever more onerous job. The fluctuation of student population, coupled with the expiry of some of the time-limited cash subsidies, this has introduced an element of uncertainty. I believe that it is positive to provide a stable working and teaching environment for the teachers if the quality of education is to be enhanced. In my manifesto, I have devoted a chapter entitled Professional-Led Quality Education, and this speaks volumes about the importance of the teaching profession. I propose that from 2017 to 18, the class-teacher ratio be raised by 0.1 for public sector primary and secondary schools, including special schools. Take a 30-class school, for example. This would translate into 3 permanent posts. The new posts are all GM posts.
If the proposal of raising teacher-to-class ratio by 0.1 is implemented smoothly, the teaching establishment in schools can be increased by 2,350 immediately. In face of the unstable work environment, I must stress here that the government respects school-based management, and at the same time, we urge schools to fill these new permanent teaching posts with contract teachers and surplus teachers so that we can provide our teachers with a stable work and teaching environment so as to attract quality and passionate young talents to serve in our professional teaching team to enhance Hong Kong's education quality. I'm concerned about students with special needs, and I will increase support for integrated education and identify areas for improvement. In the first phase of our proposal, the pilot scheme for Special Educational Needs Coordinator implemented in 2015-16 under the Community Care Fund, endorsed by the Commission on Poverty, will be regularized. The pilot scheme, now covering 124 schools, will be extended to all public sector, ordinary, secondary and primary schools in phases within 3 years. An additional 840 teaching posts will be created. Moreover, I'm also concerned about the manpower and resources for teachers and specialist staff in special schools. I propose that based on the needs of the different types of special schools, APSM posts, curriculum development, extra specialist staff, and extra support allowance for medically complex cases be provided to enable schools to more comprehensively take care of students in need. Apart from teaching staff, many schools expressed to me the wish that further IT staff support be provided to schools to help them implement e-learning and other IT-related initiatives. After consulting the sector, I propose providing a monthly recurrent cash subsidy of $25,000 to schools to strengthen IT manpower in all public sector secondary and primary schools, including special schools. This proposal will also create 1,000 job opportunities for IT personnel in the market, promoting the healthy development of the IT sector. Next, on kindergarten education. Starting from the 2017-18 school year, the government will implement the free quality kindergarten education policy to provide direct subsidy to eligible local non-profit making kindergartens, which will provide quality half-day education to all eligible children aged 3 to 6. I said in my election manifesto that a pay scale for kindergarten teachers will be established. The philosophy behind this is like the one for secondary and primary schools just mentioned, i.e. to provide a stable work and teaching environment for teachers to enhance teaching quality. However, kindergarten teachers' pay scale is a rather complicated issue. Well, fundamental changes have to be made to the free quality education system. I explained that a pay scale would involve fundamental changes to our established free quality kindergarten education subsidy model and will cause delay to the new policy's implementation. We have to consider also the need to maintain flexibility in our kindergarten operation to safeguard quality. Therefore, we need time to study this proposal in detail and collect the relevant data and discuss with the sector possible solutions. At this juncture, we first propose 2 enhancement measures. 1. Starting from the 18-19 school year, the annual adjustment for subsidy related to remuneration of kindergarten's teaching staff will be based on the annual pay adjustment for civil servants instead of the composite consumer price index. 2. The 2-year tide-over grant will be extended for 3 years to 2021-22 school year, i.e. the grant period will span a total of 5 years to ensure that kindergartens joining the free quality kindergarten education scheme and hiring experienced staff teachers and paying them a higher salary under the scheme can retain such teachers. In addition, in my discussions with the education sector, I've also received views saying that we should resume granting book subsidies for schools. I think it is important to nurture students' reading habit. Reading can help broaden students' horizon and enhance one's personal attributes. I have not included this proposal in the package of measures to be submitted to LegCo because the subsidy amount is not enormous, and schools should generally have adequate resources to buy books. On the contrary, merely counting on schools to buy books may not be able to effectively cultivate students' reading interest and habits. Currently, the EDB has a number of measures to promote reading, for example, encouraging schools to better use public libraries and other organizations' facilities and their reading programs, promote reading through the Reading Charter and e-read scheme of Hong Kong EdCity. Every year, the Scholar hosts the World Book Day Fest. To further broaden students' reading scope and stimulate their interest in reading, I have asked the EDB to explore with school stakeholders more innovative, interesting, and effective measures to promote reading. If needed, I am happy to provide additional resources. The measures above will involve an extra annual recurrent expenditure of $3.6 billion. And there will be an additional 3-year tide-over grant. Non-recurrent expenditure has to be incurred. $700 million is needed. The additional funding allocation required in the 2018 financial year is $2.253 billion. The LegCo has endorsed the allocation for the 2017-18 financial year. If the proposals are to be implemented in the 2017-18 school year, we will have to seek approval from the Finance Committee for the extra funding before the end of the current legislative session. As I said, though the sector has raised different requests and suggestions on how to use the extra $5 billion of recurrent expenditure, stakeholders generally agree that the above measures are the priority items and should be implemented urgently in the 2017-18 school year. The Secretary for Education will consult the LegCo's education panel on the 10th of July, next Monday, and brief members on the proposals. I sincerely hope that members of the Finance Committee can endorse the extra education expenditure as soon as possible. We may be discussing expenditure and funding allocation today, but I wish to stress that education is about serving with the heart, and merely putting in more money cannot fix all the problems. Increasing the education expenditure is an action that can be taken instantly, and it's just my first step in improving education for the next generation. Meanwhile, the government will consider rolling out more measures in the following 8 areas after further study. 1. Enhance teachers' professional development, including establishing a professional ladder for teachers. While we recognize teachers' specialized knowledge in a certain subject, we would encourage them to focus on teaching Chinese as a second language and teaching SEN students. We will also study policy towards GMs. 2. Examine the subject arrangements to strengthen students' concept of the nation and international perspective and provide diversified learning opportunities, including culture, arts, sports, STEM, etc., and inspire students' innovation. 3. Review TSA and school-based assessment and improve teaching and learning. 4. Promote vocational education and tailor it to meet students' ability and interest, and better meet Hong Kong's manpower's needs through enhancing collaboration between schools and the business sector. 5. Explore the role and position of self-funded tertiary education institutions. 6. Clarify the relation between the EDB and schools sponsoring bodies and implement school-based management and remove red tape to free up room for education policy research and exchanges. 7. Pay more attention to parent education and improve parent-school collaboration, thus easing the excessively competitive school culture and help children grow healthily and happily. 8. Increase the subsidy for the UGC for subsidizing research and building of hostels. As I said, on many issues, there is ample room for cooperation among legislators from different political affiliations and stakeholders. Education is a starting point. The success of education hinges on the concerted efforts of those who care about our next generation. I look forward to the support of legislators on this proposal on our new education expenditure. I hope that after the education panel has discussed it, the Finance Committee can approve the funding before the summer recess for some measures to be implemented in the 17-18 school year. President, members, I'm happy to be attending the Q&A session today. I wish to reiterate sincerely that we need to establish new long-term relationship between the executive and legislature and to have more active communication. And I trust that we will further communicate with members in the future on many other issues of common concern. I hope that on the new basis of mutual trust, there will be many more such opportunities. We will do concrete work for Hong Kong people, address Hong Kong people's problems.
Chief Executive